students and all. As we've been having a good enriching session since morning, early morning from 7:30 to 8:30, we had physical health and related activities, and then there was a breakfast break. And welcome, Sudarshan sir. I can see that you have joined in with us. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
9:30 to 10:30, we had SIP module on proficiency, wherein we learned a lot of, the spoken Sanskrit, like communicating in Sanskrit. And then, of course, we had enriching 2 sessions on universal human values. And today, on 9th of November, the session from 2 to 3 is based on literary activities and literature-related modules. And from 3:15 to 4:15, the session will be on physical health and related activities. And from 4:30 to 5:30, we'll be having SIP Module 5, lecture by eminent personalities. And as our resource person for this particular session, Dr. Sudarshan sir has already joined us. So I extend a very warm welcome to sir. And I request RP Bhaiya to please, put forward the view foil for the resource person for the activities, literary activities from 2 to 3. So as the children can see that right now we have with us, I'll give a very brief introduction to Sudarshan sir. A very brief introduction to Sudarshan sir. Sir's a research associate at present and at Center for Ancient History and Culture, CAHC, Jain University, Bangalore. And as I can see, Rajat sir also join us. A very warm welcome to you also, sir. And Sudarshan sir done his BE from BMS College of Engineering, Bangalore, and thereafter MA in Sanskrit from Karnataka Sanskrit University, presently pursuing PhD at Jain University, Bangalore. So that's quite an interesting, CV to look into, being an engineer and then quite keen on knowing the Indian knowledge system and the ancient culture of the country. So served as CEO at ONZE Technologies, a map technology provider, and a group project manager at Infosys. Of course, the research interest, pre-Siddhantic astronomy and Indian knowledge system. So we are blessed to have you with us today. And of course, most of our participants who are young, interesting, and students who are ready to learn a lot and get resolved in themselves. So I'm sure they'll be having a very happy learning in this particular session as well. So I again extend a warm welcome to Sudarshan sir and Rajat sir alike. Both of us are with us. And of course, apart from that, we have a number of panelists also with us. And large number of students are still joining in. So maybe with these words, I'll invite Sudarshan sir to take on from now onwards, so that sir can initially communicate till as the number of students joining in is ticking in. So maybe for a few minutes, we can just give them the advantage of getting connected, and thereon we can begin with. So a warm welcome to you, Sudarshan sir. And now it's all your stage.
Thank you, madam. My name is Sudarshan, and I'm very happy to be here. It's an honor to be sharing what I wanted to share to an audience like this. and this being an experiment of one of its kind also. So, I'm happy and honored for multiple reasons that way. And before I start, as Shukla Madam has warned me to wait, I thought, let me quickly share why I got into this. See, I did my engineering, spent a big part of my professional career primarily in the US, or also in multiple other countries in UK and Germany and Canada and stuff, working on engineering problems. I initially started out working in telecommunications engineering in Mexico and in the US, and later on in data communication engineering, cable modem systems, and later on moved into other areas. Okay. But having lived abroad, one thing that stayed as a big curiosity, when I lived in India, this was never the case. But when I ended up meeting with people in other cultures, met people from a lot of other cultures, right? Egypt, Middle East, Europe, South America, North America, and Japan, China. So the curiosity about my own civilization increased. And what I learned in my high school in history was mainly about kings and dates and kings. That did not satisfy my curiosity about my past at all. I was actually more curious about cultural traditions and also about intellectual traditions. Having gotten exposed to science and technology, this was natural curiosity to have. And that led me, so, after I thought I made enough money, I decided to become a student of history and Indian intellectual knowledge traditions. And I now pursue that as a part of my job. So I would like to share my screen so that we can proceed. Shukla ji,
yes, sir.
what?
Right. Aarti Priya, can you enable sir to share the screen, please?
I am able to share now.
Yes. Right.
Is this visible?
Yes, it is visible, sir.
Okay. And now I see about 584 people. I will start in a couple of minutes.
First, some of the children have raised their hand. Would you like to take up a few of the queries?
Yes, surely. Let me see.
Okay. In that case, I'll just hand over the mic to some of them. Maybe
Okay.
they'd like to ask you something.
Sure.
Miss Niranjana, would you like to ask her something?
No, ma'am. Thank you. No, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Then, beta, you can lower your hand here. Okay. Then we have Tarang. Tarang Garg, would you like to ask her something? Well, Tarang, we are not able to get in touch with. Then,
good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Would you like to ask her something?
Yes, ma'am. I'm feeling obliged to be a part of this workshop.
Okay, good enough. Then we'll continue with the session, and thereafter we can communicate with her.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, I would like to ask something.
Sure, please go ahead.
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Hello. Go ahead.
Sir, the field you worked now is one of the most amazing field that excited me through these years regarding Indian knowledge system and intellectual systems. Sir, during these times, we have been exposed to so many realities that existed in ancient India and that are still a mystery or a wonder to the new generation science, which is basically centered on westernization. Sir, how do you say that our ancestors and our ancestors' intellects are such a huge that we have a great tradition, and how can we revive that an ocean of knowledge back to us?
May I have your name, please?
Yes.
Who spoke just now?
Right.
Was it Tirtha Ashokan?
Srihari. So that
Srihari.
was Srihari.
Okay. Mr. Srihari, I'm very happy that you asked this question. And one of the reasons I'm happy is this is the same question I also had, 20 years ago. And my suspicion is a lot of the people in the audience and a lot of the young people today of your age and your batch would be having a similar question. At the end of this session, there might be part answers to what you asked. No, definitely not full answers. I don't think it is possible to just say we can come up with say, "Acha ye kijiye to revive ho jayega." So this cannot be possible. So I would like to spend a couple of minutes trying to answer your question at the end of this session. But it is a very good question. Good that you asked this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Very well, sir. That see, the children seem to be quite interested.
Yes, I'm very happy. I'm very happy to see that, madam.
Yes, absolutely. Mandeep, Mr. Mahir Nandesh, you have the mic.
Okay.
Would you like to communicate with sir? Okay. Adarsh Gupta.
Hello?
You have, yes, Adarsh. Would you like to ask something, or shall we start the session and thereafter?
Hello, sir.
Yes, Mahir.
Mahir.
It's Mahir here, ma'am.
Okay, Mahir. Yes.
Sir, I'm also very excited to know about history and this type of stuffs. And I have really lots of doubt in that Mohenjo-daro and before Christ that civilization happens and cities are developed there.
True.
Yes, sir. And
happy to know that you are curious about that. And
that Chanakya also, Chanakya
Yeah.
civilization and that more
So
Vanshas and that.
no, that is very good. This session is meant for creating that curiosity and giving you some direction on what to look for going forward. So that also brings to, I don't know if Adarsh wants to ask a question. Adarsh, go ahead, and then I will respond to Mahit after that.
So I think we should begin with the session now,
All right,
so that the
all
children get to know what the session is all about. Right?
Yes. So, like Mahit mentioned just now, and Srihari before that, even I had the curiosity to know the intellectual history of India, especially in science and technology, because I was part of that field, right? I was an engineer all along. Now, so that brought me into this, and now I work in Center for Ancient History and Culture in Jain University, where they actually work on this area. Now, fortunately for all of you, this is not the only organization where research in this field is done. There are lots of organizations across India now. When I was in my engineering, this was not the case. Hardly anybody looked at these things. But your batch is so lucky that there's a lot of organizations. So a lot of new knowledge is being published very regularly. Government of India runs a journal called as the Journal for History of Science. This is published under the Indian Journal for History of Science, is published under Indian National Science Academy, freely available for download on the internet. So a lot of new information is being published. Okay. Now, what is the subject today? This subject is to get an overview of history of science. So as a part of the literature module, over the next 8 to 10 days, you would be exposed to Indian literature from the past with some overlap with engineering, some overlap with science. Indian literature is so vast. Our ancestors were such great scholars. There is a lot of literature available in different fields. But what is it that we as students of engineering can choose to look at first? The literature in scientific and engineering areas, right? As an overview to that, is today's session. So today's session is primarily about how our ancestors used to think. We say, if there were scientists, were there scientists in India in the past? Were there engineers in India? And how did they think? So let us spend the next, this session for that. So before we look at that, I want to briefly take you on a side detour to look at economic history, because what is happening is we as engineers, that is something that you should realize, engineering and economics is tightly coupled. So if looking at the economic history, incidentally, United Nations sponsored this work. There is an economist by name of Angus Madison in Switzerland in the 90s worked on this project, massive project, took about 10 years, 15 years. The large team studied historic records and came up with economic history of the world over the last 2000 years. For a big part of the 2000 years, you see the box there. For a big part of that, it so happens that India, today we see that US controls US is #1 economy in the world, right? But was it like this before? Europe is also very rich. Was it like this before? The answer is no. If you go 200 years in the past, 250 years in the past, 300 years in the past, US was almost zero. Europe was very small. Europe were mainly, primitive people with no technology, no economics, not much money. So the primary, wealth actually resided in India and China. And if you take India, say for example, 2000 years ago, India controlled almost 1/3 of the total GDP of the world. Today, just for comparison, US is not even 10% of the world's GDP, and that is the #1 country in the world, not even 10%. India, you can't even imagine how rich India was. See, in my childhood, I talked to my grandfather. My grandfather was born in 1890. He's very old. Now he's no more, but I used to ask him how it was in his childhood. All I heard was about poverty. Okay, I didn't hear about wealth. So for about 200 years or 250 years, we have come into poverty, and you can see that in the graph, right? But before that, it was extremely wealthy, and this is what attracted a lot of travelers to come to India. Everybody wanted to come to India for studies. People wanted to come to India for trade, and that is what we hear from all the ancient records. So this is this is something I wanted to show you. And how did India become so rich? Right? If we held so much wealth, how did it become so rich? Is the next logical question. So that takes us. So the first thing that was primary source of wealth was actually Krishi, agriculture. And there are a lot of studies in this area. During the British time, there was a team from the US, America, who had come about 120 years ago. They came to India, studied Indian agriculture to understand if we can improve it. And you know what they found? Their report says there is nothing that we can improve because Indian agriculture is at the maximum optimal capacity. Now we were, if you look at the British records of how much kg, how much quintals of gehu, of chawal, rice was being produced per acre of land, today, after Green Revolution, we are not producing that much. So there was some magic that was happening. So which means at least we can know one thing, that agriculture was very good in India. 2 times a year, they would lift the crop, 3 times a year sometimes in some of the regions, where the harvest would happen. Very high efficiency agriculture. Now the second source of wealth, that is agriculture is number one. The second source of wealth was export trade. Okay, India was, take for example, 1,000 years ago, we were the largest exporter in the world. I mean, when I say India, please note one thing. It is not the political boundary. At no point in time, the whole Indian region or cultural region was under one king. It is not about political boundary. The nation state is a modern concept. When a Greek wala, when a person in Greek or when a person in Iran, those days it was called Persia, when a person in China, when they used the word India, they were not referring to a political boundary. It was the cultural region of India. So if you take the cultural region of India, we were the net largest exporter in the world at that time, right? For export, you need to be good in commerce, you need to be good in mathematics, you need to be good in navigation. So which means if you have to be good in agriculture, you have to understand seasons, water, rainfall, water management, soil conservation, plant biology, right? I mean, you need to know a lot of these shastra, a lot of these sciences to be good in Krishi. Similarly, to be good in export trade, you need to be good in navigation. And it was very difficult. Navigation was very difficult. Navigation across land is also difficult. Navigation across sea, ocean is even more difficult. To understand directions, to not get lost, to be very efficient in travel, to spend the least resources in travel was very difficult. But you have to be good in it if you have to be a good exporter, right? Now, there was also a third thing, and I will not spend too much time on this, but to be precise, you also need a lot of social order and stability. You know, in Europe, they had First World War, Second World War, a lot of people died, social disorders, then revolutions, communist revolution. Something like that in India would have blocked our wealth accrual. We cannot become a rich country with any of these kind of problems, which means we need to have good social order and stability, right? So this is the third thing. But I'm very interested in focusing on the agricultural wealth, on the means of agricultural wealth, and on the means of export wealth. What were the technologies that we would have or we would have developed, and what are the sciences that would have helped enable those technologies? You know, let us look at those. But before this, I want to spend some time looking at about the philosophy of knowledge. How did they think? How did our ancestors think? Today we study science. Today we study social studies, biology, you know, environmental science, a lot of these things. We have internalized a particular way of thinking. There is something called scientific method. But is it the same as Indian traditional science? How did our ancestors think? How different? Was it different? Was it same? Let us try to answer these questions first. Okay? If anybody has any questions, or I can continue. Questions only on this slide, last two slides. Otherwise, I will continue. Okay? Now that was the introduction. Let us look at the intellectual history. Now we looked at economic history. But now let's look at intellectual history. In the recent years, when we think of, say, who are our scientific heroes, right? We had studied this in our high school, we had studied this in our 11th and 12th. So we have heard of all these scientists: Einstein, Maxwell, Newton, Laplace, Darwin, Galileo, Descartes. So these are the scientists that we have heard of. Similarly, when we look at technologies today that we are using, I'm using this computer to talk to you. I'm using internet. I used a car to come here. I have mobile phone, TV, antibiotics, and, you know, heart valve, and all these things, my, you know, ultrasound scanning machine, all these technologies and these scientific heroes that we learned in our school, where do they come from? They all come from here. They all come from one small part of the world, Western Europe. Just in, you know, that choti si, this small place in the world map, sab wahi se aaye. So does it mean science and technology only was there? What is the history? If we dig slightly deeper into this, Answer is no, क्योंकि from about 2nd century till 16th century, there is no name of scientist from Europe. There is no name of any discovery, scientific discovery from Europe. So इतने लंबे समय, 2nd century to 16th century, more than 1000 years, 1400 years, कुछ नहीं हुआ क्या वहाँ पे? So, which is true. I mean, some of you might have studied. Remember, I don't know if you remember the boring history lessons in high school, but कुछ तो था, dark ages बोलते थे उसको. So there were dark ages in Europe where nothing happened. वो dark ages के बाद, just around 400, 450 years ago, एक magic हो गया यूरोप में. It is called as the European miracle, the age of enlightenment. Different बहुत नामों से उसको पुकारते हैं. So something like that happened in Europe. उसके बाद वहाँ पे science started flowering there. Okay. Now during this time, during these dark ages, obviously other parts of the world में तो dark ages नहीं थे, सिर्फ यूरोप में था dark ages. So what used to happen in other parts of the world? Let us now focus on India. We are all sitting in India, so let us focus on India. But after this dark ages, जो magic हुआ, many names we come across suddenly. 15th century में, 16th century में, we come across people. We know that Nicholas Copernic, he said geocentric नहीं है दुनिया. There is no geocentric. It is actually heliocentrism. This was a very key thing for Europe. Very first, पहले बार यूरोप ने मतलब चमका गए, मतलब they suddenly said अरे ऐसा क्या करके. And then the other thing was Galileo. Even he did a very strange thing. He said no to church. Church जो बोलती है, it is wrong. No, it's something else. Reality is something else. And then in England there was Francis Bacon, who actually said, let us stop using Greek methodology and let us use a new methodology. And Greek methodology had controlled European thinking all these days. Pehli baar, Bacon said in 16th century, let us stop using the Greek methodology. Now, what is this Greek methodology? Let me try to, and we will cover that later. Then Descartes, he said, let us use Arab mathematics, Arab numbers, barbarian numbers. And barbarian means outside, foreign numbers, which was very strange. A lot of people were afraid to use foreign numbers in Europe those days.
Explain again.
So, okay, this is what happened after the Dark Ages. After the Dark Ages, ये सब हुआ और उसके बाद science वहाँ पे started growing. Now, during the same period, यहाँ क्या हो रहा था इंडिया में? What was happening in India? See, I have drawn a timeline here. The blue period, the blue portion in that is the Dark Ages. European Dark Age के समय है वो. But if you see before the Dark Age itself, India में each arrow there, based on my own understanding, there is one publication, scientific publication or a discovery, important discovery. I have marked that with an arrow. Okay, based on actual data. Maybe I have missed out a lot of things, but मेरे लिए example ही चाहिए थे. So as an example, I have collected some and I have put this graph. Now you will notice that a lot of things were happening in India. Each of that arrow is on the right side. You don't have to read everything, but I've just, for convenience sake, listed it. If you are curious, all the various major scientific publications, I have marked it there. Okay, based on whatever dating that we have today. Okay, whatever work. Not many of these people, dates are not very easy to find out. So, but whatever working dates that we have, I have put it there. One thing that strikes here, हम चाइना नहीं देख रहे हैं, मिडिल ईस्ट नहीं देख रहे हैं, इजिप्ट नहीं देख रहे हैं, वहां पे भी डार्क एजेस नहीं थे, सिर्फ इंडिया देख रहे हैं. इवन इफ यू लुक एट ओनली इंडिया, इवन देयर इट इज वेरी क्लियर दैट जो डार्क एजेस जो बोलते हैं, that dark age was mainly an European dark age. It was not there in India. It was not there everywhere else in the world. This is one thing that is very clear. Okay. Now, just as an example, there is Charaka, Vagbhata, Aryabhata, then the Indian number system, and then another very important. This is a new learning for me. Last 2 years I came to know is the gunpowder industry. We were the only exporter and producer of gunpowder, major exporter and major producer of gunpowder in the world, including the as recent as Napoleonic War in Europe was fought using gunpowder that was exported from India. यूरोप में गन पाउडर नहीं बनता था, ठीक है. So that is a new learning for me. But a lot of these technologies were actually being used, and newer technologies were being produced continuously during this period. वही बोलना था मुझे. Okay, let us move ahead. If we had so much technology, what enabled this technology? For this much science and technology work, जो यूरोप में नहीं होती थी, that much if it got produced, क्या basis था इनका? What could have been helped this production of this technology, right? During this period also, there were some people who came to India, foreigners. So unka bhi, for example, there was this Al-Khwarizmi. He didn't come to India, but he extensively translated Brahmagupta's work, which went out from India. Al-Khwarizmi used to be in Bait al-Hikmah in Baghdad. Baghdad had a big university and a library called Bait al-Hikmah. So he translated, and he also wrote a lot of Arabic mathematics books, and wrote about India. And later on in 12th century, Liber Abaci wrote, he's later on known as Fibonacci. He wrote his Numero Indorum book, which used Indian mathematics and translated that to Latina. And there was this Said al-Andalusi. He used to be living in Spain. Spain was under the Arab control those days. And he wrote, there are only 8 great people in the world. And out of these 8 people, science men, number 1 are the Indians. The Hindu, Indian, same meaning. Today we call it Indian. Those days it used to be called Hindu. Refers to the people from here, this place. So that is what Said al-Andalusi has written in the 11th century. So lots of books used to be going from here to Al-Andalus, and they would get translated to Al-Arabiya. Then another person was Al-Biruni. Al-Biruni came along with Muhammad Ghazni to India. He was a scholar, and even he it was interesting that when he wrote his book about India, one of the things that he says is about how proud Indians were that there is no other science like theirs, because Indians were kind of very, very self-aware that छोड़ो यार, बाहर तो इतना science नहीं है. We were the guys who have all the science करके, Indians used to say. So Al-Biruni makes kind of upset with Indians on that. It was nice to see that, interesting to see this quote from him. Now let us look at, we get a lot of other data, right? What was exported from India, not only what these people say, but also Indian textiles, Indian steel. Indian steel was being exported till late 18th century. And lots of material from India you still find in the museums and in the archaeological digs of the other nations, to where we used to get export. And the Indian export, the oldest records of Indian export we find from 4,000 BC. Can you imagine? 6,000 years ago, our ancestors were exporting stuff to Middle East and to Northern Africa. Anyway, so what was it that helped? No, if there is one thing, there are a lot of reasons you can come up with it. But when it comes to the philosophy, when it comes to the way of thinking, there is one thing that actually stands up, which I want to highlight to you. And, as students of science and engineering, you may even appreciate this. And here is an example from Charaka Samhita. Charaka Samhita is more than 2,000 years old. Kab ka hai, kisko pata? Matlab, we know it's approximately 2,000 years old, or maybe more than that. The dating I have seen from 500 BC to 200 AD, 300 AD. So I don't know. It's quite old, very old. Now, I'll just read it quickly. Yuktis pashyati ya bhavan bahukarana yogajan yuktis trikala sadhneya trivargas sadhyate yaya. What he's telling is, he's actually telling his students, Charakacharya, he's telling his students how to think, right? He's telling about how to think. He says if you use Yukti, you can achieve everything. Okay, Bahukarana Yogajaha. So Bahukarana Yogajan Bhavan Ya Pashyati Sa Yuktihi Trikala Jnaya Trivarga Sadhyate Taya iti saha vadati. Saha kim vadati iti se Yuktya. Yukti, there is something, some magic called Yukti. हमें मालूम नहीं कि युक्ति क्या है, कुछ तो है. तो युक्ति से सब कुछ हो पाएगा. धर्म, अर्थ और काम सब कुछ हो पाएगा. शायद मोक्ष नहीं मिलेगी, but remaining things, you know, the Trivarga is possible to achieve. It's very powerful. So what exactly is this Yukti then? इससे थोड़ा curiosity आ गई. So let us look at further. There are, you know, a lot of people talk about Yukti, okay? Charaka only, I have more examples from Charaka here. He says, when you, he's telling doctors now, he's teaching doctors, आप cure करते हैं, so विना तर्केण या सिद्धिर यदृच्छा सिद्धिरेव सा. If you cannot use tark to explain your cure, then it is accident यार. अगर कोई patient का कुछ ठीक हो गया बीमार, it is accident. Your हस्तक्षेप is not there. But if you can logically explain it, then I will, मैं मान लेता हूँ, तब भी मानता हूँ. That is what he is telling. Second, he says, सुखम समग्रम विज्ञाने विमले च प्रतिष्ठितम. Not only he talks about yukti, he is using other terms, tarka. He is using the term vijnana, right? Then there is another one. He says, siddhir yuktau pratishthitam. Tiштhatyupariyuktigno dravyajnanavatam sada, he says. So he says, he is very powerful. What he says is, Are yaar, tu doctor hai kya? Do you know all the medicines? Do you know which medicine is for what? Still, I will consider you low. You are still bekar. But if there is a doctor who does not know medicine, but he knows yukti, he is still a better doctor. So what he's telling is, you may know all the medicines, all the cures, all the way surgery, whatever, but if you don't have yukti, you are a useless doctor. That is what he's telling, right? And similarly, Sushruta is supposed to be even more old, ancient doctor. He says, Shrutayaschaitana karanam yukti virodhat. What he says is, if there is an authoritative Shruti, you know, it could be Veda or Agama, any of those Shrutis, authoritative. But if what it says, agar Yukti say, if it is opposite, if there is a, you know, conflict with Yukti, then I will not accept it. Okay, so he is giving Yukti utna sthan, you know, that much status. He says very high status that he is giving to Yukti. So, yaar, Yukti kya hoti hai? Similarly, Nilakantha is very modern, you know, 500 years ago. He lived in Kerala. Probably, you know, Haridas was also from Kerala, I don't know. But Nilakantha was from Kerala, somewhere near Thrissur. And if there is anybody from Kerala, they might know. What he said is, Etat sarvam yukti moolameva nat tvagama moolam. His whole shastra that he is writing is yukti moola. So he's, you know, he is very clearly qualifying. It looks like the concept of yukti was used in ancient India. It was used all along by all these scientists, right? Next, here is, so what is yukti then, right? So there is a, so yukti probably means rational thinking, jugad. Also, it also includes jugad. It includes rational thinking. It includes pramana paddhati, something that can be prove, some kind of rational argument. All these things. Looks like Yukti included all these things. Something that what we today use in modern science. You know, probably Yukti meant something like what we use in modern science. And another example I wanted to show you. This is slightly older. We looked at Nilakantha and Charaka and Sushruta, 2000 years old. Vruddha Garga was probably much older, 3000 years old. Okay, we don't know exactly. This is an unpublished text that I was working on. This is a book. What is the time now? It is 2:35. Okay, so this is I need another 10 minutes. So, and then we can get into question answers. So this is a book that I got from Alwar in Rajasthan. Anybody from Rajasthan here? I'm not sure. So Alwar has a big, beautiful old library of by the Maharaja. Lot of old handwritten books. I got this book from there. And in that book, you will notice here, it says nahi sarvatra ganitam, nahi sarvatra darshanam, darshanam ganitam chaiva yugapad yoga sadhakam. What he says is, he's an old scientist from 3000 years ago, and what he says that to understand reality, I will do only experiments or only observations. He says, no, not good enough. Or I will do only logical reasoning or mathematics. No, that is also not good enough. What he is telling here is, to understand reality, to understand nature, you need both the things. You need experimentation as well as mathematics. That is why he says, uses the word yugapad yoga sadhakam. You need to work on these two things together. You need to do experiments and you need to do logical reasoning and mathematics together and use them together. Then you will understand reality very well, right? Ruddha Garga tells this in his chapter on, lunar astronomy. Anyway, going to now, this was something from 3000 years ago. Uske pehle hi, is it something that started 3000 years ago? Looks like, इसे एग्जाम्पल देखते हैं तो शायद this was the ancient thinking, because Ved में ही, this is an example from Krishna Yajurveda. We all learned this as young children. Smritis pratyakshamaitishyam anumanaschatushtayam etairadityamandalam sarpaire vavidha asyate. What the Yajurveda mantra is telling is, to understand the solar system. In this case, he is talking about Aditya Mandalam, that is solar system. All the things about the sun. To understand the solar system, you need 4 tools, okay, 4 sadhanam, 4 upakaranam. What are these 4 tools? First one is direct observation or experiment, right? Experimentation. Second is logical interference. Anumanam can refer to either logical interference, also may refer to mathematical inference. Logical inference, or mathematical inference. Third tool is, you will also need old records, okay? Smritihi. Smritihi means old memories. And last one is, you will need legends, ancient legends. Somebody will say, अरे यमुना यहाँ बहती थी और अभी पहले पूर्वजों के समय में अभी तो यमुना वहाँ चली गई. So when you hear these old legends, you get some data there. Some kind of data that you can use in your verification and stuff. So these are these ancient legends. They are called AICTE-SIP. When you have these 4 things, you can use them in a way, using Yukti, you can understand science, you can understand reality. This is what the Veda is telling, right? So it looks like the concept of Yukti or the methodology, logical methodology, looks like it's pretty ancient, right? We don't know how old is the Krishna Yajurveda, right? This particular passage in the Yajurveda, it's from the Taittiriya Aranyaka, and in the same passage, in the same prashna, there are mantras which can be dated. We don't know, right? I mean, I'm just making guesses here, but it can be dated to about 3000 BC based on astronomical observations. So, which is about 5000 years ago. So, looks like this has been this kind of thinking has been very ancient. Now, now this tradition looks like continued all along. Here is some example. Varahamihira in the 6th century, he's reviewing existing publications, existing scientific publications are called Siddhantas, astronomical Siddhantas. He looks at 5 past publications. मतलब he is a modern guy, 6th century में बैठा है, and उसके पहले जो पुराने किताबें थे, पुराने publications थे, उसके review कर रहे हैं. Varahamihira is from Ujjain. I don't know how many people from Madhya Pradesh in this call, but Varahamihira is from your place. He's from Madhya Pradesh. He's originally from probably Iran, from Persia, but he lived and worked in the Royal Observatory there as an astronomer. And he reviews these and then he ranks them. He says, इसमें ठीक आ रहा है result, इसमें experimental result match नहीं हो रहा है. So he does re-experiment and then ऐसा नहीं कि पहले वाले बोल गए, बुजुर्ग लोग बोल दिए और हमने we have to receive it, उसको वेद वाक्य स्वीकार करेंगे. वैसा नहीं था. Looks like they were doing this review again and again. It used to always happen. Everybody is used to do this. And he's doing this ranking. And then same thing, Parashara in approximately 8th century, in the Parashara Siddhanta, he's doing again a review of various Siddhantas. And again, he does the ranking. And he says, Varaha Mihiracharya ne 200 साल के पहले रैंक किए थे, वे मैच नहीं हो रही है, मैंने तो एक्सपेरिमेंट किए और वो रिजल्ट्स अलग आ रहे हैं. So क्यों अलग आ रहे हैं वो शायद उनको मालूम नहीं था. Today we know that it was different due to the Earth's axis axial precision. He got different results, but he's doing a different ranking. Same way, another example, 15th century Kerala mein, Nilakantha is doing again a ranking, and he's even telling Paraspara Viruddhascha Siddhanta Bhavanti, Abhinava Siddhanta Pranaya. What he says is, if you are a scientist, you better be doing re-verification of Siddhantas, published results again and again. And if they don't match, you are supposed to do new reports. You have to develop a new Siddhanta, Abhinava Siddhanta Pranaya. If you don't do this, you will in Paraloka, you will get danda. You have, if you are a scientist, you better review past work. Okay, you better do review of literature. Otherwise, in Paraloka, you will get danda. Okay, so that is what Nilakantha is saying. Very interesting, right? So it talks of an extremely vibrant knowledge tradition. आज के जमाने में हम जो पाश्चात्य देश देखते हैं, शुक्ला जी हैं साइंटिस्ट, तो आज भी मतलब there is this review of past work, new reports are being generated, new data, the boundaries of knowledge is getting pushed, and looks like our ancient scientists considered this as their dharma, as their duty to work on this, right? Now here is an example. There is actually two ways of doing science, right? We looked at Yukti, we looked at the Pramana, from the Ved also we looked at the Pramana, and how Buddha Garga looked at that you have to use experiment as well as maths. Now, this is a very famous conversation. You as students of science, I am sure you will recognize both these people. Here is a photograph from 1940s or 50s from California Technology, Caltech in Los Angeles. There are two famous great scientists standing there. One is on the left, the person is Paul Dirac, right? You know Dirac. In बहुत लोग इनको Dirac बोलते हैं, Dirac. But poor chap, his name was probably Dirac. And on the right side is Richard Feynman. Richard Feynman used to call himself an Easterner. मैं तो वहाँ Indian लिखा हूँ, वो सिर्फ मजाक के लिए. Don't take it seriously. Richard Feynman Indian नहीं बोलते थे अपने को Eastern बोलते थे. मैं West नहीं हूँ, मैं East हूँ. वो East बोलते थे. और Dirac अपने को मैं Western हूँ बोलते थे. ठीक है? Philosophy में. Feynman सर्वदा मैं Eastern हूँ philosophy में बोलते थे. ठीक है? So इन दोनों में difference क्या है? If we can see this difference and understand this difference, that is the difference between Western science and Indian science. Okay, so if you look at it, the Western science, the Dirac is telling, it is more important to have beauty in one's equation. So what he's telling is, equation में जो लिखते हैं, that should be beautiful. Math is inherently beautiful. That is what the Greeks used to say. A circle is a very beautiful, structure. That is their philosophy. Mathematics should be innately beautiful. That is what they are telling. Indian never said that. Indian scientists never says mathematics is beautiful. Indian scientists will say nature is beautiful. अगर हमने मैथमेटिक्स से नेचर डिस्क्राइब नहीं कर पाए तो क्या कर रहा है? गलती तो हमारी है. If I cannot understand nature, गलती हमारी है. नेचर तो ब्यूटीफुल है. So नेचर तो भगवान है. Whatever it is, भगवान भी बोलते हैं, बौद्ध अलग बोलते हैं, जैन अलग बोलते हैं, but nature is ultimate. I am just a small guy. I am just a small thing. Nature तो बड़ी है. So Feynman is telling that. What Feynman is telling is, I worship the phenomenon, not the explanation. Explanation तो यार, human is doing the explanation. यार, that is not great. That is what Feynman is telling. He says, I don't tell nature, use this equation. So I don't, like, for example, I'll give you a quick example, okay? In Newton ने laws of motion आपने पढ़े हैं ना? High school में Newton's first law, Newton's second law, Newton's third law. So Newton actually called them law. Law क्यों बोलते हैं भाई इसको? ये क्या कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन लिखा है कोई किसी ने? लॉ कहाँ से हो गया? So Newton is calling it a law. Now that is the Western view. So nature works exactly like this. ये लो law लिखो भाई, law लिख लिया मैंने. So this is the way nature is working. पक्का. So 200 years later, Newton was disproved, right? So Indians will never call it law. If Indian writes the equation, he will not call it law. He says, यार तो human लिखा हूँ, ये कहाँ से कहाँ का law हो गया? Law नहीं है यार, तो ठीक है, जुगाड़ इसे यूज के इस्तेमाल करो, आंसर मिल जाएगी. But nature is great. That is the way an Indian will think. So I can know more things. I cannot prove everything. That is what Feynman used to say. If you just, this is just an intro into two different ways of thinking. There is more that I will show. So I'm going to, this is the last slide. I'm done, and the time is now 2:48, approximately 2:50, and we have 10 more minutes if there are any questions. How Indians used to think, and I want to just contrast that with how the Western thinking used to have. So when you next time come across somebody talking about using certain words, and just pay attention to the words. Go to a dictionary, go online, just Google, check what that word means, and see how if you can understand the difference in thinking. In modern science, it's called positivism. There are logical positivism, there is computational positivism, where the theories are generated to explain nature. After a while, if the theory is insufficient, we have to throw that theory in the dustbin, come up with a new theory. Now that was actually the traditional Indian method. And this probably looks like made Indian science so advanced till 200 years ago, 300 years ago. After 300 years ago, so when I go to the old slide, so after about 17th century, maybe early 18th century, maybe, no scientific major publication happened from India. No new scientist name we remember. No, books or any such siddhant is being produced in any field. Whether it is chemistry, whether it is astronomy, whether it is mathematics, or even engineering, we don't see much. So that is why I have marked the last 200-300 years as in the black. So that is the Indian Dark Age. So हमने European Dark Age देखे. So this is the Indian Dark Age, last 400 years ago. And of course now अभी तो ठीक हो रहा है, when India is slowly coming back, whatever. Okay. Now from this I'm done. This is all I wanted to share with you. Couple of points just to give you an introduction into one small aspect of Indian science and how they used to think. From tomorrow, you'll get into actual details and start looking at details. Isme, if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer.
Oh yes, thanks a lot, sir. This was really very interesting, and I'm sure the students must have been enriched by all this. So, Ayush, you have the mic. Would you like to put forward your views or ask something?
Ayush Kumar ji, boliye.
Yes, sir. Hello.
So with respect to the session that went on right now, would you like to know something, Ayush?
Hello.
Looks like Ayush is having a sound problem.
Yes.
Anybody else interested?
Miss Upama Mukhopadhyay. Miss Upama Mukhopadhyay. Miss Mahima Singh.
Good afternoon, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Miss
Please
Mahima, go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Mahima Singh. I am from Shivalik College of Engineering, Dehradun, but I am basically from Patna, Bihar.
Okay.
Sir, overall, we can conclude that to achieve this success in science at the world level, we must focus on our past techniques. Sir, can we back to our own way of studying? Sir, how can we back to our own way of studying like our ancestors do?
Okay, I will answer. So first part, you made a statement. I want to comment on that. You said to become successful in science, we have to go back in history. ऐसे तो नहीं तो दिखती है. So that is not true, I think. You can be successful in science without knowing history also. Okay. There are a
Sir,
lot of great scientists from this
my
country.
way of telling that not history, the technique of our ancestors.
So modern science, you are right, perfectly right. Modern science is already using the technique of our ancestors. Okay, so it has learned from Indians probably to use the technique of our ancestors. So on the right side in this slide, left side is the traditional European technique or Greek technique. Okay, right side is Indian technique. For example, there is a bottom से तीसरा, you will see darshana samvadaha. Okay, so when you get a particular result from calculation, you do a calculation, trigonometry, log table सब लगा के आपको एक आंसर मिल गई. वो आंसर लगा के आप क्या करेंगे? Indian technique is you have to do darshana samvada. What is darshana samvada? वो आंसर को फिर एक्सपेरिमेंट करना है, फिर एक और बार एक्सपेरिमेंट करके you have to compare that with darshana, and you have to, why, if it is different, why is it different? You have to do that analysis. This analysis is called darshana samvada. ये यूरोप में नहीं होती थी, इंडिया में होता था. Indians used to do this, and fortunately for us, modern science में ये सब अभी राइट साइड में मैं जो लिखा हूँ सब मॉडर्न साइंस में इस्तेमाल करते हैं, इसलिए तो मॉडर्न साइंस अभी सक्सेसफुल है. बट आई वुड लाइक टू कॉल इट एज एन इंडियन, I would like to call all this as Indian technique. Okay, so the modern science में जो अभी कर रहे हैं, that is nothing but Indian traditional technique. So as a as an Indian, it is very nice to understand that these techniques actually came from India, and what exactly. But as students of science and technology, मैं जो बोलता हूँ, आप अच्छे engineer बने. While you become good engineer, please understand the past. How will it help you? It will help you in getting into the philosophy. So it is not important to remember the equation. Equation मैंने याद कर लिया यार, वो रट्टा मार लिया और problem solve भी हो गया. But what is the philosophy behind it? When I do a lab experiment, what is the philosophy? Why do we do it like this? When I do error correction, why do I do error correction? So understanding our past and historical methods gives us a lot of pride, no doubt. It also helps us in becoming good scientists and engineers also.
Okay,
Next
sir.
question.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Mukund Prasad.
Sir, yes. Adarsh and Mukund. Mukund, you also have the mic.
Yeah. Hello, sir. Myself, Mukund from Bangalore.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, even though if my question is out of box, what we study what history we study in India, don't you think it is much more outdated and it is not concentrated much more on South Indian history or like anything like that?
It is correct. This question, maybe some of you other people will also have the same question. See, scientific discovery, वो history में भी हो, physics में हो, nuclear physics में हो, engineering में हो, whatever new discovery happens, right?
Yeah.
That will take at least 20 years to come to textbook. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Mukund Prasad, did you study in CBSE?
Yeah, I know much more about CBSE, even though I studied state.
So, no, I'm just giving an example.
Yeah.
CBSE textbook, your CBSE textbook, science textbook or history textbook is much better, because my son also is in the same class. Is much better compared to my batch. In my batch, कुछ भी नहीं था. आर्यभट्ट के नाम भी नहीं थे वहाँ. भास्कर आचार्य के नाम भी नहीं था. Your batch at least has some of these things, and I think when you become a faculty member and you are teaching to next generation, that science textbook will be much better. So what I am telling you is it will take time to improve. Normally it takes 20 minutes, 20 years for new discovery and all these things to get into the textbook. So you are right. You know what to do. Sad hai, textbook mein nahi hai, but it will take some time.
So one more thing. So if you consider the first surgery or anything like that, they just say it was done in some 3000 BC. But the fact was Charaka was doing in 300 BC itself, right? But they don't mention anything about Charaka. Or
So
even considering
is
Pythagoras theorem was based on Indians.
No, this, I understand. It's a good question. And in fact, Haridas also mentioned some of this earlier before the talk. I want to tell this to everybody, okay? Now that you have entered engineering, become very scientific in your outlook. What that means is question everything. You know, you have to question your high school textbook. You have to question your engineering textbook and ask yourself, is it true? How did they find out? If this is true, then what are the evidence? You know, what is the evidence? So I'm happy that you are asking these questions. You continue to ask these questions. You will be great engineer. For example, this question that you mentioned about Charaka, yes, probably 20 years later, we may get a different evidence that will again change the understanding. So understanding has to keep on improve. Our boundary of knowledge has to keep on growing. And but that does not mean. See, there is another trend among my children's batch, your batch and all that. Some people, they want to say, हाँ सब कुछ था, एटम बॉम्ब भी था, ये भी था, अरे यार न्यू हाइड्रॉन रिएक्टर था क्या? हाँ न्यू हाइड्रॉन रिएक्टर था, वेद में है सब कुछ. There is no point here. We are scientists, so we go with evidence. If there is evidence, we will take it. So have that. Our rishis used to think like that. I just showed you the example of the Veda mantra, Yajurveda mantra, which says what is the method you have to use to understand nature. Please employ that method. Use pratyaksha, anumana, smriti, aitihya, upamana, these kind of logical reasoning, scientific methods, and understand. You don't have to be unnecessarily, we don't have to lie to say that we are a great country. That is not our point. Yeah, any other question?
Sir.
Myself.
No, it is already 3 o'clock. Shukla ji, abhi band karna hai kya?
Sir, I have a question. Sir, I have.
Dear students, though officially we can have a break for 15 minutes as a bio break. Sir, would you stay on with us for another 15 minutes so that these children can ask you a few questions? Permit?
Yes, I will be happy to answer. Yes.
That's so. I'm thankful to you for that. So the next child,
Sure, madam.
who Adarsh Gupta, you have the mic. Would you like to ask something? Or Aravind, would you like to ask something?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good.
Please go ahead. Yes.
I'm myself from
Yes.
from Kerala. Sir, you have now told about Nilaganda, and he is from Thrissur in Kerala. And I am very much close to Thrissur, but I don't know about him unless and until you told me. So
Correct.
in such a predicament, I have studied 12 years of schooling. And
let me tell you, where near Thrissur are you from?
I am basically from Palakkad.
Oh, you are from Palakkad. Okay, let me tell you about another person. So there is this person called Madhava. Okay, in I don't know where exactly. Near Kallikurushi Mangalam or somewhere near there, Lakidi, near Lakidi maybe.
Good afternoon.
Inside. Yeah. So there was this person called Madhava. He was a scientist in the 14th century. He did one experiment. He's world famous today. Okay, Madhava is world famous. Harvard, everybody is reading his books. He did one amazing experiment. Imagine a guy. He did an experiment for how much long? 55 years. He did an astronomical experiment. 55 years. Every day. Okay, such a complicated experiment. He measured lunar eclipses and solar eclipses for 55 years, taking measurements every day. All the students creating astronomical instruments, taking measurements and then making mathematical computation, verifying it. Answer error ho gaya, फिर repeat karo, फिर repeat. 55 साल उसने experiment करके, when he was about 70 years, उसने result publish की. that kind of scientists existed somewhere near where your house is. Yeah. Anyway, I hope you'll spend more time, all of you, to understand some of these ancient scientists. There's a lot to learn from them.
Sir, the actual thing is that we know about the apple that fall on Newton's head, but no one like this. Sir,
Correct. No, that is why I'm happy to come and talk to you. But I will not be the only person. There are hundreds of engineers and scientists like me. There are hundreds of scientists like me, better than me, who have left their science job and engineering jobs, and they are coming to history of science. So more and more information you should get next coming years.
Hello, sir.
Yes, go ahead. Who is this? Om Kumar Patra?
Om Patra,
Yes.
Om Kumar Patra, please go ahead.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. The session was very enriching. I'll thank you for that first. One question that I was having is that I have been noticing that all my peers and juniors, every time they complain about one thing, that history is boring and it's a burden on us. So do you think there should be a change in the pedagogy of how the history is taught to them? There should be a change in that?
True. See, the thing is, if the Indian method of telling history is not boring. Okay, the Itihasa method of telling history is not boring. Unfortunately, the method has to change. So, but who will bell the cat? After you grow up and you make money as an engineer, please get into history and become a history teacher. Okay, I become a history teacher. I teach history to children, and my students are very happy with the way I teach. So I'm sure there are newer ways of, we can learn from the West also. They are very good in telling history. See, the thing is, if you give them intellectual history, how people used to think, if you give them cultural history, if you tell, this is how they used to pataka, ऐसे करते थे, अभी आजकल पटाखा ऐसे हो गए. What is the cultural progression? You can teach chemistry using cultural history of firecrackers, Diwali pataka. Okay, you can teach chemistry with this, right? So there is a lot. You can, while teaching history, you can teach culture. When you're teaching history, you can teach physics. You can make it very interesting. I mean, I'm not blaming my history teachers. I just want to improve on them. I just want to improve over and above them and make it better and better. That is how we can grow.
Yes.
If some of you become history teachers or get into NCRT and as a panel to improve history syllabus, it will be amazing. I would like to do that, and I'm trying to do that now.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very
Hello,
much.
sir. Hello,
Thank you, sir. Just a moment, children. So before we take on the next question, let me just make a small note to all of you. Dear children, this is, a duration for the 15 minutes break that we give in between the two sessions. The next session, as we said, will resume at 3:15 on the holistic health. And all the children who would like to take a small break can go ahead. But we are here, okay? But we are here along with sir to take up your queries. Yes. So,
Thank you.
yes, whoever wants to ask the next question. Another
Actually,
you?
Niharika,